Hello, I'm Dhanya Rajendran. Welcome to the News Minute. Today we're going to discuss a story that we published on the site this week, done by Executive Editor Sudipto Mondal. It's about a disputed site that the BJP calls the Ayodhya of the South. It's in the Madurai district of Tamil Nadu, called the Thiruparankundram hill. It's revered by the Hindus, the Muslims and the Jains. The tussle over who does this hill belong to has been going on for many, many years now. It finally reached the courts this year. We'll discuss all that with Sudipto. But what a story also brought to light was how politics played out, what each political party did, the crucial role played by the Tamil Nadu police, and of course what the courts did in the process. Sudipto, the story is around 16,000 words.
It's two parts.
Yeah, it's in two parts. Also, it is our effort to make people indulge with long-form journalism. We have been trying to do that here. Every 2-3 months, we publish these really long stories, and we hope that it is worth your time. Yes, it is behind a paywall. There are two parts to the story on the Ayodhya of the South. Sudipto, the Thiruparankundram hill, it's been covered widely. I mean, all newspapers, TV channels have been covering this whole tussle over the Thiruparankundram hill, and it became headlines when the BJP held the Murugan, which is a huge rally in Madurai itself, where we saw thousands and thousands of people converge.
About
right?
6 lakh, 5 lakh, 6 lakh people. 22nd of June.
Yeah, that's the number which they have been giving. Why did you decide to do a long form piece on this story?
Okay. Firstly, Dhanya, before I answer that question, I must thank you for your patience. This is something that took an inordinately long amount of time. I think I haven't spent this much time on a story in my entire career, and it is not merely because the investigation was so complicated. Some of the answers I was seeking were actually fairly simple. What this taught me is how much opacity is there in Tamil Nadu. The struggles I had with getting simple documents from the bureaucracy. So one of the reasons why it got delayed was, of course, that. But if you ask me why this story was done and what was the motivation, actually, it opened up like a Russian doll. Isn't it called that, layer after layer? So my initial thing was that there is something cooking in Madurai. Like, Tamil Nadu Bureau had told us about this, and that Hindutva forces were carrying out these very militant kind of agitations. And then I remember on the 9th of March is for the first time I went to Madurai. And the only reason I went there was to get an idea of what has happened so far. Why? Because on the 9th of March, secular groups were coming together to hold a demonstration. I thought that is all there would be to it, which is go find out why these agitations were happening, what is a secular response, and do a simple two-side story. But it wasn't because of a third element which emerged when I went there, which is that the DMK was not there in that gathering in which the entire non-Hindutva coalition was present. So you had coalition partners of the DMK who were present in that meeting. There were all kinds of left, Ambedkarite, even Christian, Hindu, Shaivite. Many groups had turned up. I think close to 30-35 groups had turned up for that event. But the DMK was absent. The VCK was present, which is an ally. The CPM was present, which is an ally. So my inquiry really started with that simple question. Why is the DMK absent from a secular coalition? And then, as you know, things went deeper and deeper.
So your story starts with this character called Abu Tahir. We are not going to discuss the entire story here. We're just going to tell you some of the elements because I'm urging you to go read it.
That part is above the paywall anyway, no?
Yes, of course. Everybody can read it, so we can talk about it. Why is Abu Tahir so important?
He became important later. For me, it was just one character who had been stopped by the police from conducting the animal sacrifice, the Qurbani ritual at this dargah, which is in...
So I think, Sudipto, before we go into all this, just describe the hill and what is the conflict, or what was the conflict.
Right. Now, we all know that in the subcontinent, every religion has tried to reach higher ground. Quite literally. You see any hill, any this thing, there will always be a contest about reaching that hill, claiming that hill and all of that. So in this hill, which is outside Madurai, about 5-6 kilometers from the city center, has had a contest over that 120 odd acres of that hill have been contested for the last 2,500 years. And for me, I couldn't ignore that in the present conflict, there are echoes of whatever has happened over the last 2,500 years, Dhanya. Because there is a non-Brahmin conflict. It's not just a Hindu-Muslim conflict. There's a Brahmin-non-Brahmin conflict. There are Jains who play an important part in this conflict. Right now, the court case that is pending over what the hill should be called, how it should be divided up. In that court case, also the Jains are still a party. So it's a Jain, Hindu, Muslim, Sufi kind of a contest, and therefore it has multiple dimensions to it. I hope I'm not digressing from your...
No, it's not. So then how does Abu Tahir become important? Because the entire thing blows up since Muslims do go to the hill to offer animal sacrifices.
Not just Muslims. For me, Abu Tahir was just one more Muslim who was stopped from conducting that sacrifice initially. Until I discovered that it was not just Abu Tahir. Along with Abu Tahir, there were at least a dozen Hindus from his hometown who had traveled with him to conduct that ritual, who believed in the divinity of that Sufi saint. And Dhanya, you and I know that Sufism, the Bhakti tradition, are traditions which actually try to provide a balm to this subcontinent when it was suffering from injuries caused by these Hindu-Muslim conflicts, right? Saying that God can be accessed over and above these kind of things. So for us, we know that Sufism symbolizes that thing. And in that Sufi tradition, you have this Abu Tahir, who's not just going there as a Muslim. He's going there, to my mind, I mean, as an ideal Indian, no? He's going with his Hindu neighbors on a Christian holiday, by the way. They land up in that hill on Christmas Day to celebrate this ritual. And what happens? They're stopped and they're persecuted, and the rest is in the story. But so that's why it became a very important thing. And of course, he went missing. So here you have a secular syncretic tradition, and somebody is trying to suppress the story. Somebody doesn't want it to come out that Hindus and Muslims are both going there. Why? Because if it comes out, it will have a direct impact on the court. Dhanya, as you know, the court has not been made aware of the fact that this is a syncretic place of worship for which you need evidence, for which Abu Tahir and his group become very, very crucial. So therefore, him going missing was the real, what do you call, goose chase? No.
Him going missing as in you could not contact him for a few months.
The first time I spoke to him itself was after a lot of effort. I got his phone number. He spoke to me. He confirmed that there were a bunch of Hindus with him who had traveled on Christmas Day and all of that. And suddenly he cut the call. From that moment, it took me 2 to 3 months, I think, to finally get to him. Because he just stopped receiving phone calls. And I had been introduced to Abu Tahir, or at least I got his number, from the local Jamaat in Thiruparankundram. He stopped taking their phone calls. He was just incognito. He just went underground. And then after a lot of effort, after one of the human rights lawyers offered to help him and represent his case, he finally says, okay, he comes aboard again and says, I will speak. And that is, I think, part of the story which really taught me a lesson in journalism, which is that, yes, on one side, my editor is really tense about the fact that this has taken 6 months. The whole office is under pressure, right? Because we have to keep churning out stories. Somebody can't do the self-indulgent thing of going away for 6 months. But when I finally found Abu Tahir, you know what happened, Dhanya. That is, I think, behind the paywall, that section.
Where his Hindu neighbors also talk to you.
Where I discover this beautiful settlement, which should be an example for all Indians, where everybody is living harmoniously and all of that. Anyway, that's what is in the story. I found some very interesting things.
So, ever since the Congress came to power in Karnataka, one thing that we were told, Siddaramaiah told his cabinet, is that one of the biggest threats is other police officers actually siding with the Hindutva forces. Now, I don't know if we can say siding with the Hindutva forces here, but in your story, it's very evident that there's Coalition for Communal Harmony, which is lawyers, activists, and even smaller political parties. They were not getting the support they required from the police. They were not allowed to hold a public meeting. In fact, the police had even objected to their public gathering, right? Saying that it could create law and order issues. So the behavior of the police throughout this was strange at best.
Strange and quite disturbing. No, what it goes to show is that the police can act independent of any kind of power structure. That they are an independent, autonomous power structure by themselves, and not just the police and the bureaucracy, which is the civilian administration, the deputy collector's office, and the whole revenue department, actually, the way they conducted themselves, the HRCE department. So that is what is worrying, which is either these people have no tether, which is that the DMK has no control over them, which then raises questions about the DMK, right? Saying or rather the voting public votes somebody to power, and that act of voting somebody to power and somebody coming to power means you come to power over the bureaucracy. That is your first power, which is that you use all these arms of the state for governance. And if you're not able to control them, are we going to say, is the DMK going to shrug its shoulder and say, oh, we are not able to control them? That's also an embarrassment. Or the other more scary thing is DMK playing some kind of double game where they are looking the other way deliberately while the bureaucracy is playing game with the...
So as I've told you, my theory about this. Now, if you read the story, you'll understand what we're talking about. Basically, there are two different forces, right? There is the Hindutva force, the Hindu Munani, the BJP, etc. on one side. And then you have this coalition for communal harmony. So the BJP goes to court and the Hindu Munani goes to court. They get the permission to hold their rally. The communal harmony group has to really struggle. And at every stage, they are met with resistance by the police. In fact, the first question Sudipto asks in the story is, why did this controversy even break out? It would not have broken out if the police had not stopped people like Abu Tahir, who for many years had been going up that hill and doing the animal sacrifice. Now, what Annamalai said, what the DMK MLA MP said, everything comes much, much later, right? First confrontation is between the police, the revenue department, and by regular Muslims and Hindus who are going up that hill.
Can I just add to this? Thanks for bringing this up, Dhanya. I just want to once again underline that thing. Do remember that in all of this, on Christmas Day, to December 25, 2024, there was no Sanghi, there was no Hindutva organization, there was no Hindu devotee, there was no local person from the village who had objected to Abu Tahir. It was the police acting independently. Independently or at the instruction of somebody is what I couldn't find out. Somebody has to ask this question.
Yeah. So Sudipto, I know that we spoke quickly about the historic claims, right? But if you could just explain, what are the historic claims over this hill?
There is no doubt that the Jains came first. I found a very interesting rabbit hole to go into. I've tried to do justice to that in as few words as possible. And that rabbit hole is the contest between Jains and Brahmins, or Jains and Agamic Brahmins, to be more specific, Iyer in this case. How the Jain claim is over time eroded and is replaced with this Hindu Iyer Brahminical claim, where the Pandyas finally side with the Agamic Hindus, and that is a very, very interesting part to my mind of the story, which explains how today in Tamil Nadu, when you say that Murugan is a Tamil god, how is it that in Thiruparankundram the prayers are conducted in Sanskrit? To answer that question, you have to go back into that time of the Pandyas, of that of those centuries. What was happening is what if I try to look for an answer for that. Yeah.
And then there is also the shrine for the Sufi saint.
Yes, the shrine for the Sufi saint is much later. It's about 700 years old. But that again there are two contesting narratives around it. So you have some very loose, almost provocative statements coming from the Hindu right wing saying that this was violently installed by the sultans of Madurai. But archaeological evidence suggests that this shrine precedes the time of the sultans of Madurai. In fact, Sikandar Badshah, after whom the shrine has been named, is somebody who is remembered as a collaborator of a Hindu king of Madurai who was struggling to get rain. And it's believed that because of the prayers of this particular Sufi Baba, there was rain in Madurai. And that is the actual story. Whereas now there is a retelling of that story also based on some false claims that it was established during the Madurai Sultans and their time. In fact, the Madurai Sultans patronized the Thiruparankundram temple. They gave them endowments.
Tell me something. How has the BJP used this entire controversy, not just the BJP, the Hindu Munnani also, right? And you also have reported from Baba Budangiri in Karnataka. Did you see parallels between these?
Absolutely. Starting with my piece doesn't talk about it that much, but starting with the choice of deity. In Baba Budangiri, the Datta Pita, or they call it the resting place of Dattatreya. The emergence of these kind of deities, Dattatreya, Murugan, Subramanya, is a very interesting development in the history of the subcontinent, because this is where Agamic Brahmins are doing a sort of appropriation, where they're taking local gods and they're Sanskritizing or Brahminizing them. So the first connection between Baba Budangiri and Thiruparankundram is this thing of the Brahminization. Also, what you see is that in that Sufi shrine of Baba Budangiri, it has attracted for centuries the most excluded sections of society, Dhanya. And the same applies, I suppose, to the Thiruparankundram Sufi shrine as well. The people who are going with Abu Tahir are not some Brahmins. They're also lower intermediary caste Hindus who are going along with a bunch of Muslims, because I suppose they find a more a higher faith, I suppose, which is more inclusive, less divisive, less casteist. So Sufi faith across time has attracted the weaker section. So Baba Budangiri also, there was a huge Dalit, a group of Dalit devotees in Baba Budangiri. All that history gets erased to turn it into a Hindu-Muslim thing. So that's definitely one comparison. And the last one, of course, Shiv Sundar, who's a regular contributor to the News Minute and a very senior intellectual journalist in Karnataka, has documented again for the News Minute how the Sanghis doing their thing is not out of character. The people who are out of character are really the so-called secular forces. What did the JDS in Karnataka do in the case of Baba Budangiri? What did the Congress do in the case of Baba Budangiri? And I hope, I have requested Shiv Sundar sir, if he writes a follow-up piece to our piece on Thiruparankundram, just comparing Thiruparankundram to Baba Budangiri, it will be fascinating as a read, I think.
So just to go back, how have the BJP and the Hindu Munnani used this on the ground?
Well, it's evident that they have managed to get lakhs of people excited about it. What we don't know, Dhanya, and that is where I suppose, you can feel a little hopeful. What we don't know, and a lot of people said this, we don't know if it is true, which is that, are they swayed by Hindutva or are they swayed by Murugan? There are those who say that we came just for Murugan. We don't care about Modi. We don't care about Annamalai. We don't care about BJP, Sangh Parivar, Hindu-Muslim divide. Yeah, you did one entire one gala conference on Murugan in Madurai. We are Murugan devotees, and so we came. So we are not Sanghis. Is that true? Is that not true?
You're saying the crowd need not have been a communal crowd at all.
That's what they were saying. I mean, the people over there also, many of them were saying, yeah, we came for Murugan.
Because it was called a Murugan Manad. No, so finally, while we were discussing the story, one thing that I kept telling you is that when we talk to Congress, DMK people, or any of, like, let's say the BRS or YSRCP, what they keep saying is that sometimes when BJP communalizes something, one strategy they take is to ignore it completely. I don't know if that's a good strategy, because on the ground, there are certain benefits which the BJP gets, right?
I'd like to answer this by referring to a book that V. Geeta, who has been quoted in the article, she referred a book to me, and I mentioned this book also in that South Central episode. In that book, there is an example of the 1971 elections. That election actually opened my eyes also to the possibilities of secular politics. We underestimate the potential of that kind of politics sometimes, I suppose. Why do I say this? Because of how Karunanidhi fought the 1971 elections, what he was up against. He was up against the worst types of divisive ideologies promoted by Rajagopalachari, and Kamraj also gets swept up in this entire Hindutva frenzy of that time, where they're trying to drum up this thing of, oh, these are godless people, the Dravidian godless people. And, Periyar, at that very point when this election is happening, Periyar is conducting a conference in which they are trashing Ramayana and the whole, that pantheon of gods and goddesses, which again is taken up by Rajagopalachari as an issue, saying, look at them, look at what they are doing and all that. And Karunanidhi, instead of cowing down, instead of backing out, he takes them head on, ideology for ideology, to the point where he asks, how come you guys were quiet when Periyar was demolishing Ganapati statues? And why are you so worked up now that he is going after Rama? Is it because Rama is an Aryan god and Ganapati is essentially Dravidian god or a non-Brahmin god? And you understand. So there is a scope to counter their ideology with a secular strain culled out from their own universe. You don't have to contest Hindutva with Marxism. What the Dravidian movement has done very successfully is contested Hindutva with Hinduism. Yeah.
Which they are forgetting to do now sometimes.
Perhaps.
Yeah. And yeah. Okay. So thank you very much, Sudipto.
Thank you, Dhanya.
Everybody who's been watching and listening to us, do not stop with that. I keep telling you all, go back, read the story. It has taken Sudipto a lot of effort over months and of course a lot of my patience. But finally we have published a story with some good pictures which will give you an idea of the geography of this place that we are talking about. The case, I think, is now over in the High Court, right? Where the Hindus have sort of got the control over the hill itself. So this is the story of a place called Thiruparankundram, which is called Skandar Malai, Samanar Kundra, Sikandar Malai. Different people know it by different names, but the court has now said that it is Thiruparankundram. Do read the story. Do write to Sudipto at sudipto@thenewsminute.com. And remember, take a subscription, read the story. We have many more stories lined up for you. Thank you very much.